Have you ever been to a conference attended by 30,000? Have you ever been to a conference with 5,000 events in 10 days? In 1995, I was in charge of organizing the largest international conference in history. Beijing is now shorthand for two interrelated events that have changed the lives of women worldwide: the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women and the NGO Forum. Women came in the thousands from all over the world for one reason and one reason only: for women to be taken seriously. Yes, to be taken seriously, whether as victims and/or as leaders, in health, in education, in science and technology, in environment, in the economy, politics, governance, and certainly peace and security. Equality, development, and peace. These have been the demands of women in every women's conference since Mexico in 1975 to Beijing in 1995. Action. They required action. And they have asked since Beijing to form again this global movement on women, peace, and security, which has gathered momentum. And now, we continue to make that demand that Zana and Amna did just a while ago, that if we are serious about peace, we have to take women seriously.
In Guatemala, 19 years ago, we signed the peace agreements ending an armed conflict of 36 years. That day, a comprehensive platform for women's empowerment was achieved because the Guatemalan Peace Accords, as a pioneer experience, included specific commitments aimed at gender equality. How was it possible? Well, it was the result of women's participation in the peace negotiations. I took part at the table of peace negotiations, and for several years, I was the only woman there out of more than 30 people. I got strength from women at the Civil Society Assembly and also from the Beijing conference, which I attended. Thanks, Irene. In the post-conflict stage, we are waging another struggling from the women's movement, this time to achieve justice for women who were victims of rape during the war, because at that time, sexual violence was used as a weapon of war, as a tool for genocide as part of the state policy. So now we are convinced that achieving justice is a way to have a real, lasting, and just peace. Thank you.
In Northern Ireland, after 30 years of a bloody conflict, the ceasefires were finally declared in 1994. A page of history was beginning to turn. And when the peace talks were announced, we women in the country decided we should be at that table. We had been applauded over those 30 years for holding the communities together. And now we felt our time had come. Within 6 weeks, we went out across the country and asked all the women, will you become involved in the peace talks? 6 weeks later, we got elected. During that process, we wanted it to be inclusive. We wanted to bring Beijing back home with human rights, inclusion, and equality. We reached out to those who, at that time, were considered to be violent extremists. We were the only party to go outside the room to talk to those who had breached their ceasefire in order to bring them back in and to ensure that they stayed in. But it isn't only about the process. Women also know about the substance. Alongside the police reforms and the constitutional arrangements, we also decided that we wanted issues on victims to be discussed and brought in alongside prisoner releases, because often this is what happens in peace agreements. Only the prisoners are discussed and not the victims. Integrated education, the future of our children and young people, the right of women to full and equal participation. We got all of that in. And then we went out to the people. And the women again took to the streets and the villages and asked the people to vote yes. And they came back with a resounding yes. It wasn't easy bringing Beijing back home. We were humiliated. We were told to shut up and sit down. But we refused. We stood up and we spoke out. And we have been doing that ever since. We will never give up. Thank you.
Three wonderful, inspiring statements we heard just now. In 1995, Beijing gave us a renewed energy to pursue women's equality and empowerment agenda. In 1996, I became the ambassador of Bangladesh to the United Nations. And I started working with civil society to see how best we can reflect that agenda of equality and empowerment in the mandate of the Security Council. Lots of resistance. But a moment of opportunity came in 2000 when Bangladesh got a seat in the Security Council. And in March 2000, I became the president of the Security Council. And I announced on the first day of March that on 8th of March, on International Women's Day, we will adopt a resolution recognizing women's role in peace and security. Again, stonewalling, particularly from the permanent members of the Security Council. We worked hard. Resolution was not possible. We got a declaration which emphatically underlined that peace is inextricably linked with equality between women and men. We worked 8 months to get the resolution finally in October of 2000. 15 years have gone by from there. And now we have this 15-year implementation report from the United Nations. Now it is upon all of us, individually and collectively, to ensure that the agenda for women's equality, the agenda for inclusive security is on the top of the global agenda.